broadcasting from the Unshackled Studios in Melbourne. This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net. Now here's Tim Wilms.
Hello everybody and welcome to this week's WilmsFront Snapshot news show, coming to you on Census Night, Tuesday the 11th of August 2026. I filled mine out, which I did online, which many of you are choosing not to do, particularly since you have to give your name. So many have requested the old paper census that we used to fill out back in the olden days before 2016. You may remember the first digital census in 2016. The website crashed on census night. We are also living in the era of cyber attacks and hacks, and nobody trusts the government with our information to keep it secure. Even though most of it's going to be collected digitally, they're not going to release it they're not going to release it all at once, but in parts from 2027. Some freedom activists have urged mass non-compliance with the census. The Australian Bureau of Statistics, who carries out the census, is threatening to fine people $364 per day if you don't fill out the census by tonight. But others, particularly Christians, are urging people to fill out the census because all the other religious groups, including no religion, will be filling it out so they can have greater representation and get better benefits from governments. It still asks you about your ethnicity. That's a question that they're getting rid of off the British census. In our census, there are new questions about sexuality and gender identity, which Albanese, you may remember when they were deciding on the questions for the next census. I think it was in 2024, early 2025. They didn't want to include them because they didn't want to start a culture war, but they got lots of backlash from the equality lobby, and so they did a backflip. But if there's any young blokes who think it'd be good for a lol to tick that they're non-binary, please don't. About 20 years ago, there was also the big joke prank at the time was to write in your religion as Jedi. That was the big push there to try and get that included in the census data. We are live on the WilmsFront YouTube channel. Hello to everyone in the live chat, Naughty Design and Margot. It is 8:30 p.m. here in Melbourne, Victoria, where we may have had a change in Premier, but the streets and even your homes are not safe from the gangs and youths. There has been an outpouring of grief after the death of 60-year-old Sunshine shopkeeper Van Viet Chong on Wednesday from injuries he sustained after confronting a group of teenagers who you can see in this CCTV still on the left, who he confronted after they allegedly stole clothes from a nearby shop. So 5 teenagers were originally charged with affray, violent disorder, intentionally causing serious injury and intentionally causing injury. A 15-year-old boy from the Bringbank area, which is the local government area which takes in Sunshine, had his charges upgraded to include manslaughter and was remanded in custody. Charges against a 13-year-old boy were withdrawn. 2 14-year-old girls were granted bail with non-contact orders, and a 12-year-old boy was granted bail. There was a rally and vigil in Sunshine on Sunday, organised by the Vietnamese Mothers in Australia community group, demanding stronger action on youth crime and community safety. And Premier Ben Carroll and the Police Minister Paul Edbrook met Truong's family and local businesses on Thursday afternoon. I wonder if that went any better than Anthony Albanese's appearance in Bondi post the Islamist Hanukkah Bondi massacre. Now, his government can pass all the tough bail, adult crime, adult time laws, but the issue is that successive state Labor governments have stacked the judiciary with magistrates and judges who do not believe, particularly imprisoning young people. They believe that it sets them up for a life of crime, even though we've heard stories about youths who have been repeatedly bailed and gone on to commit be charged with serious indictable offences, and they just keep getting bail. I listened to Warren Pickering and Pauline Hanson's interview with Tom Elliott the day after Warren Pickering was announced as State One Nation leader. And Tom Elliott mentioned that this is the problem with the judiciary here. They believe the sob stories of those who have been charged, because the judges and magistrates, they don't immediately hear from the victims. They hear from those charged and their lawyers. So this magistrate who granted the two girls bail was cited the girls' age and lack of criminal history among the factors amounting to a compelling reason to grant bail, and they would not pose a unacceptable risk to the community. And then you had one of the 12-year-old girl's mother crying when her daughter was originally remanded on Sunday before being last Sunday before being granted bail this week. But of course, it's not just youths who are arrested and charged with serious offences. It's also adults. And the new mayor of the city of Maribyrnong, which its main area is Footscray, Mohammed Semara, who was born in Sudan, which the main Sudan, so he's a Muslim. He's obviously with a name like Muhammad. He had a literal baptism of fire, threatened last week by a black man with a knife on the streets of Footscray on his way to meet the new police minister, Paul Edbrook.
The Maribyrnong mayor has spoken of his fear after a man threatened him with a knife in the middle of a Footscray mall. It's the latest attack in a surge of violence in the western suburbs, where local leaders are demanding more police on the beat. Isabel Quinlan has more.
Pinned against the wall, tasers drawn.
Keep him up there!
Police pounds on a man Footscray locals know all too well. But today he was armed with a hunting knife, first confronting media, then threatening the Maribyrnong mayor and council staff on their way to a meeting with the new police minister.
We tried to de-escalate as much as possible until the police had arrived, but it was a very frightening situation.
Just hours after his arrest, the man was back on Nicholson Street again.
I can confirm it was the same individual that was involved in the incident that took place a couple of days ago in Footscray, where the trader was attacked.
That trader was Richard Lee. He had a stool thrown at his head while trying to break up a fight between two men.
And I told him to put it down, and obviously he turned on me. Yeah, he just pegged it at me, and I used my hand, blocked it, grabbed it.
Locals say antisocial behaviour is a daily occurrence. This man arrested over an armed robbery in May.
Get the camera away from him. Don't move. Don't record him.
5 mayors from the western suburbs have joined forces, calling for more police on the beat.
Prevention is much better than dealing with a catastrophic situation that we have now.
I feel that we've got the appropriate things in place to be able to do what we need to do.
While we've seen a significant police presence here today, many in the community say enforcement alone is not enough, calling for more funding into rehabilitation programs.
Enough is enough. Let's take bold action to deal with the problem we are facing.
Isabel Quinlan, 9 News.
So we're seeing in Melbourne that migrants and refugees are becoming victims of violent crime, often by the people of the same ethnicity that they are. And this is another thing with the judiciary. They take into account if a refugee commits a violent crime that, PTSD from their story as a refugee, even though there's other refugees who make a great life for themselves and contribute to Australia. Being a refugee shouldn't be an excuse or a mitigating factor. This is why we are having such, and if you look at the crime statistics, the overrepresentation in custody of those born in Sudan, it's because they're not being taught here in Australia proper consequences. And I don't really fault Victoria Police. As you know, I haven't been the biggest fan of Victoria Police, but they are doing a pretty good job at arresting these youths and other serious offenders. But when they get before a magistrate or a judge, bail or they get a community corrections order. And Ben Carroll in the 3 months before the state election can't undo. Now, going back to Pauline Hanson and Warren Pickering, they suggested that if a judge or magistrate gives a sentence which is not aligning with community expectations, it could be reviewed. I think we should have basically an appointment limit to judges and magistrates, because it's basically for life. They literally sit up on a pedestal in an ivory tower, and it's easy for them to become detached from the ordinary experience. So maybe a 10-year term for judges and magistrates that would allow successive governments to review how a judge or magistrate has performed. At even in our High Court, there's justices, there's a compulsory retirement age of 70, unlike the US Supreme Court, when they can stay on there until they're basically senile. Then we had a 17-year-old boy slashed with a machete. Now, obviously, there's blurring of his wounds, but that's still pretty confronting. So he was slashed by two youths who stole his e-bike in Wantirna, which is in Melbourne's east, on June the 20th. So this is him being treated in hospital. They haven't been apprehended yet. Naughty Design says they've done this to us deliberately. Now we're going to have to treat Australia like Singapore. We used to have a high trust society. Now, Ben Carroll, along with his Attorney General, Sonia Kilkenny, who of course tried to run against him for Premier, announced that he would stop suppression orders for convicted rapists, criminalise coercive control. So does that mean that Dan Andrews can finally be charged for his coercive control for keeping us locked in our homes during COVID? Abolish good character references, which I agree with, because those who commit heinous crimes such as rape and pedophilia, until they're caught and arrested, tried and convicted, had good reputations in the community. That's often how they blend in. You're obviously not of good character if you committed a crime like rape, pedophilia, and also murder. So I support that. Now, Monday morning, a crater-sized pothole on the Princess Highway near Bunya, which is in West Gippsland, took out more than 30 cars. This is another problem which Ben Carroll has to have a quick fix for, because this was all the money went to the big build for the Metro Tunnel, the Westgate Tunnel, the Northeast Link, the Suburban Rail Loop, the Airport Rail Link, and obviously there's the extra CFMEU and corruption expenses. So they've skimped on road maintenance, and that's particularly bad on the Mornington Peninsula, which I know that's where Andrew Bolt now lives, and his cars has been the tyres been destroyed because of a pothole. Let me know in the comments if any of you have had a close call with a pothole. And another issue that he's had to mop up is the Jacinta Allen's work from home mandate that workers would be entitled to 2 days of working from home. Of course, not everyone can work from home. And now law officers want to be able to work from home, even though there's a court backlog. Now, this was a way of her to wedge the Victorian Liberal opposition. Hopefully they'd react like Jane Hume, and that they would fall into the trap of saying that people should return to the office, which was incredibly unpopular in the last federal election campaign, but they didn't, because it's work from home arrangements should be negotiated between employers and employees. There should not be an extreme forcing employers to allow employees to work from home, nor should there be, you heard from some News Corp commentators, ironically a lot of them work from home, that basically workers should be ordered back to the CBD offices to make sure the sandwich guy is employed in the Melbourne CBD, which was always a ridiculous argument.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
Hang on, something's wrong here. what that noise means? Yes, it's time for a bird flu update. Of course, the chicken dance is that what we're going to see our veterinary officers going to be out in front of veterinary clinics dancing to, like we saw during COVID, the TikTok nurses, because apparently those are overwhelming patients that practice all of their TikTok dances. So we had an announcement by the Agricultural Minister, Julie Collins, and the Emergency Management, the Environment Minister, I should say, Murray Watt. You can. Marg says, "Very clever, Tim, but it's loud and I can't hear you." Well, you can hear me now. So they announced today that they were going to be spending $2 million on 1,500 vaccines for endangered Australian birds in zoo. Now, they're not going to be vaccinating poultry because there are many countries who won't accept a vaccinated poultry in exported chickens, but they're already pumped chickens with hormones to make them grow and plump. So what's a few more? They have to be double vaccinated. So it's going to be difficult. This is why they're focusing on birds in captivity. So birds obviously fly around. They're a bit hard to get the same bird to fly back for its second dose. Where are the animal justice rights activists saying that these birds are going to be vaccinated against their will? Now, because here in Victoria we had a magpie and a seagull test positive to bird flu, there is now going to be a 14-day ban on outdoor gatherings of hens of 50 or more, which is, remember, 14 days to stop the spread. So this is the first stage of a bird flu lockdown.
Chicken farms across Victoria have been ordered into lockdown as cases of the deadly bird flu soar. We'll go live to Chester Nahn for more on this. Chester, the virus has reached Melbourne.
Yeah, good evening, Leisha. Quite a concerning new development as the deadly H5N1 strain of bird flu is detected in Clyde, which is a suburb in Melbourne southeast, and that is why authorities are taking this significant new step in ordering a lockdown. So farms with more than 50 birds are now forced to house their chickens for at least 14 days to reduce contact with wild birds. It is a temporary restriction at this stage, and it only applies to poultry owners in Metro Melbourne and along the state's coastline. Today, new detections of the virus in Apollo Bay, as well as Victoria's southwest coast, but Clyde in particular is of real concern because it's so close to chicken farms in Melbourne's southeast, and authorities are enforcing this heightened measure to protect the supply of eggs and poultry.
New areas in new directions heading towards the east of the state means that the risk to our poultry, even though these are single bird detections, is hard to quantify at the moment.
So all up, we have 47 detections of the H5 bird flu in Victoria, most of them in greater crested terns, but also this week positive tests in a seagull and a magpie. And the public is being urged to continue reporting sick or dead birds to help authorities track the spread of this deadly virus. Alicia.
Very concerning. OK, Chester, thank you.
So Graham Cook, Victoria's Chief Veterinary Officer, is he the new Brett Sutton? Now, there's been a few online memes circulating that Dan Andrews is going to become the bird flu czar, and Mark Knight in the Herald Sun lent into that. So it has the hens in they can still be called free range, even though they're not free ranging outside. So they've all got masks on. And one of them asked, what's the government going to do about the arrival of bird flus? And Dan Andrews with his North Face jacket, stay at home. Now, remember, the media, they always talk about it being the deadly H5 bird flu. Now, anyone would think we're the first continent on Earth for this strain of bird flu to circulate, and in fact we're the last. So this is why our media is trying to scare us all over again. Now, in bad news for data nerds who were wanting to track the bird flu curve, Julie Collins and Murray Watt today announced that they would no longer be announcing the tallies of bird flu because it's basically just going to become endemic in Australia. Remember, there were all those COVID data nerds. The main one was COVID Live by Anthony McCarley, who went by Migger. Actually got an Order of Australia medal for his data collection. Now, we're also going to have a vaccine tracker. I don't see Dawn in the chat tonight, but thankfully her backyard hens, are allowed to still roam outside and they're not going to be force vaccinated. We should also remember that they're already pumping our cows full of chemicals, that Bouvier, I think that's Bovier, I think that's how you pronounce it, that chemical to stop them farting. And what was it, King Charles's idea that cows should wear masks on their asses to stop them farting methane. There, of course, are the some people who claim that free range chickens, they're actually worse for the environment because they take up more land. So there are all these contradictions when it comes to environment, virus, and animal welfare.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
Now, Anthony Albanese is back from leave, probably to work on his marriage with Jodie after his appearance on the Bush Deep podcast at the beginning of July. Now, Bushy is the persona of actress Nikki Osborne. That is where he said he'd shag, marry, and date Kylie Minogue. But it's his other crass comment to Bushy about the Japanese Prime Minister, Sane Takaichi, that has now escalated to a full-blown diplomatic crisis.
What's the most crap gift you've ever received on an overseas jaunt?
Oh, gee. I'll tell you something I got recently here that was pretty strange but ended up being quite good.
Yeah.
Was a melon. The Japanese Prime Minister brought a melon.
How did he get that through customs?
It's a royal melon.
Oh, she smuggled, it was a she.
She?
Did she smuggle it?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm expecting.
Got a couple of melons.
She brought two.
She brought two, as you do.
She just came in looking like Pamela Anderson.
She brought two.
Yes, really.
And they're beautiful.
Now, Anthony Albanese, through a spokeswoman, said that the assertion is wrong, that he's referring to her breasts. Even though he lifted his palm of his hands to make the melon gesture. And of course, melons are it's the most used slang for breasts, along with jugs, hooters, and rack. And the factual fact of the matter is that Saini Takaichi, she presented Albanese with a crown melon, only one melon, but Anthony Albanese clearly getting swept up in the moment because, and this is the main issue here, that Anthony Albanese, to try and appear hip and cool and relatable, he decided to go on this podcast because he just passed his budget and at that stage had overtaken One Nation in the polls. So I thought he was on top of the world. So it has escalated now because the former Australian ambassador to Japan from 2020 to 2023, Shingo Yamagami, wrote in The Australian that the last thing she, Saine Takaichi, expected was to be so casually mocked by the trusted leader of Japan's special strategic partner. Nevertheless, the foundation of our bilateral relationship are rock solid and not swayed by such an unthoughtful joke. So, Prime Minister, please enjoy Japan's sweet and juicy melons without thinking about a woman's anatomy, and instead focus on what our two countries must do together. Now, she didn't smuggle it in. Obviously, it passed customs and quarantine. Crown melons aren't cheap either. They're about $250, so quite a bit more than the rock melon and watermelons produce that you get here. And now it's our special relationship with Japan, one of our greatest allies, that is going to survive this cringe embarrassment by our Prime Minister. In a diplomatic cable dated the 13th of July, the Japanese government suggested there had been sensationalized reporting in the Australian media and stated that Australia could be reassured that Japan did not believe there was any ill intention with Mr. Albanese's comments. Let us stress there would be no action over the matter and that Japan would assist the Australian government in not making comment to allow the Australian media to move on. Now, Japan owns pretty much all of our iconic beer brands now, such as Foster's, VB, and Carlton Draft. So luckily, it's because if Albanese made this about made this sort of crude remark about Trump or Xi Jinping, there could be trade retaliation. But Japan is a very it's a very advanced and orderly country, so they're not going to cut off the Australian supply of beer. But again, it goes to the Prime Minister's character that he, again, if say Tony Abbott or Scott Morrison made this comment about a female leader, there would be outrage by the Labor feminists, but you had Tanya Plibersek and Katie Gallagher saying that the assertion is wrong, that it was sexual. Now, New South Wales Premier Chris Minns clearly not learning anything from the Prime Minister's appearance on Bush Deep, was the inaugural guest on Kyle Sandilands' new live show, which costs 99 Australian dollars to subscribe to. His media advisors should tell him, do not mention melons. Now, of course, Nikki Osborne Bushy, she would absolutely love that her podcast is blowing up like this. She's this week's topic is bird flu with Bridget and Paula Powers, the twinnies, those twins who talk in sync. They care for sick birds on the Sunshine Coast. Used to work with Steve Irwin. Now, I noticed that Channel 7 in most of their bird flu coverage use a photo of Bridget and Paula Powers there. Maybe they can be put in charge of the vaccine rollout. Now, Parliament is back this week, and Anthony Albanese met today with the new president of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, Tu Lam, a man. So I doubt he'll be making melon jokes about him. There have been protests by local Vietnamese groups because, well, Vietnamese refugees to Australia, the reason that they fled is because they didn't want to be governed by a communist regime. And so they believe it's insulting for Australian governments to court both have diplomatic, economic, and even defense relations with the communist government of Vietnam. But again, it's geopolitical because even though China and Vietnam are both communists, they have centuries of distrust with each other, and a Vietnamese Communist Party, their governance is not at it's not like Xi Jinping is basically trying to enforce a Han Chinese cultural nationalist communism on China. Vietnamese communist government is not like that, is much more just communist in name only, just like the Laotian government. Of course, I went to Laos. They still had the communist hammer and sickle there. With Parliament back, there was the first question time. Now, I don't think that the opposition should waste questions about Melon Gate. It was Mary Alderud, the member for Monash, who asked that he should apologise to Sayini Takaichi, and he said, I reject the assertion of the question. And they also shouldn't waste questions about falling house prices, because 61% of Australians in the latest Resolve poll said they supported a reduction in housing prices. There's a lot of people actually cheering for a crash. Let me know in the comments if you support a reduction in housing prices. Now, obviously, the opposition are asking that to whack the government over its broken promise on negative gearing and capital gains tax. But what is having an effect on the cooling of the housing market? It's still, house prices are still greater than last year, is, of course, the 3 interest rate rises. And the Reserve Bank today kept interest rates on hold at 4.35%. Though Governor Michelle Bullock did hint that there could be further rate rises because, of course, inflation is not within the target range of 2.3%. Headline inflation data when it was released last month was at 3.8%. On the Albanese government's agenda is gambling reform. So Anthony Albanese, he's taken 1,000 days to respond to the Peter Murphy report on gambling, which supported a total ban on sports gambling advertising and a ban on inducements. So all Anthony Albanese's legislation does is limit gambling ads to 3 per hour between 6 a.m. and 8:30 p.m. and during live sporting events during that time. But after 8:30 p.m., it's all the onslaught can begin. And of course, most AFL, NRL, and cricket games don't end at 8:30 p.m. There's also a ban during school pickup and drop off. And there is a ban on gambling advertising within sports stadiums and also on jerseys. There's not a ban on inducements such as money back. And the reason why Anthony Albanese, he's banged on about the harm of social media, but is not too as concerned about the gambling harm. Now, as you know, I'm a libertarian, but I am looking at this from an angle of vested interest. And the reason why Anthony Albanese doesn't want to go further is because, well, he believes in the right to have a punt. He wants to also protect the revenue of the sporting codes who get a take from the sports bet, people placing live bets, and also he doesn't want to take away revenue from the free-to-air networks because he thinks it's important for our democracy for the free-to-air networks and their journalists to continue. So he's happy for that to be funded by gambling revenue. And there was talk that if it was banned on television and also streaming smart TVs, then the free-to-air would have to be compensated for that. So you have to look at these things by look at the reason why Anthony Albanese is banning social media for under 16s is because, well, the mainstream media, they want young people to get their news and information from their platforms. And so all of this is about the political media complex. So Anthony Albanese looks after the mainstream legacy media free to air in exchange for soft coverage. There was a incredible puff piece on 9 News Sunday about a profile piece on Ben Carroll. Of course, a Nine Entertainment Co. Got money from the Albanese government's public interest journalism fund. So this is supposedly to make sure that there's quality public interest journalism to protect Australian democracy. But of course, in reality, they've been bought. And this is also the purpose of the News Media Bargaining Code, where despite people clicking on mainstream media news articles through social media, the media companies are demanding payment from the social media companies, even though they are getting people are sharing the links to their articles on social media, so they're getting traffic that they wouldn't otherwise get. It's absolutely perverse and insane, but as again satisfying the mainstream media, and so to keep them on side and hoping for better coverage. And this is why Anthony Albanese bangs on about disinformation from online sources, because he can't control the narrative, where he can through governments could back in the olden days with just TV, radio, and print. We also had last week Tony Burke delay his planned address to the National Press Club titled The Work of Managing Migration Program. So Burke was expected to announce a plan to bring down overseas migration by 75,000 to prevent family visa applications within Australia. So, of course, what happens is that a migrant brings their family, they apply for a family visa, they're allowed to stay and work here while they're on bridging visa. Total manipulation of the system, restricting the right to work of asylum applicants, because international students are notorious for claiming asylum. Then they get full work rights on bridging visas while their application is assessed by the Administrative Review Tribunal for about 3 or 4 years. And also a cap on backpackers. Now, cabinet discussions were held without the Prime Minister, and so one of Tony Burke's spokespeople said that elements of the speech would not be finalised, though Tony Burke has already made a ministerial directive to increase visa application fees, which of course is just revenue raising, and prioritising onshore over offshore applicants for skilled and family visas, which has the effect of slowing offshore arrivals. Now, Pauline Hanson still says that Labor is continuing mass migration. They have repeatedly failed to reach their migration targets, and Australians are paying the price through housing shortages, rising rents and strained services. They claim that the Albanese government, they've got permanent migration down to 185,000 a year. Latest ABS figures show that net overseas migration added 300,000 people. And of course, this is, they wouldn't admit it, the Albanese government, but they are responding to the rise of One Nation. In the latest news poll, One Nation and Labor are neck and neck on 29%. Angus Taylor has not turned the corner with the coalition on 18%. So this is why his questions in question time still stink. Chris Bowen, though, did have his planned address to the National Press Club, where he said he's going to override the Northern Territory and Queensland governments, ban them from having gas-powered AI data centres, because he claims that they'll push up electricity prices. But Chris Bowen can wave his magic wand to mandate that AI data centres be powered by renewables and add to the grid, even though as renewables are still intermittent. The renewable energy rollout is adding to our power bills. Still, majority of our power comes from coal and gas. We now have Peter Malinowskis' $3 million Royal Commission into AI. So Peter Malinowskis, he has just come back from a trip to Silicon Valley, where he signed a memorandum of understanding with OpenAI, who of course created ChatGPT. There was a protest in Melbourne on Sunday against a data centre in Melbourne's west. There is going to be a planned data centre on the site of the old Ford factory in Geelong. They're just popping up all over the place.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
The East Safety Commissioner, Julie Inman-Grant, is at it again. Her office, its latest significant action is to censor a post on X and Substack under the threat of massive fines, a 2024 post by ultra TERF, extreme feminist writer Genevieve Gluck, about trans woman, or as Gluck wrote it, trans identifying male. I find this ultra TERF term trans identifying male really confusing, because in my opinion trans woman automatically implies biological male. For people who say police shouldn't be speech shouldn't be policed, they sure police us when we say trans woman or refer to a trans woman as she. I mean, I don't want to compel them. Why are they trying to compel me? But I digress here. So Gluck wrote about a trans woman who works as a regulatory liaison officer for the Australian Medical Association Victoria, who has also posted BDSM pornography on OnlyFans. So there was a complaint by this individual to the eSafety office, who issued this notice to X and I presume Substack, but they are not challenging the decision, or nor have they published the letters. So the reason for the takedown notice under the Online Safety Act 2021 that the Scott Morrison coalition government passed was that the content was cyber abuse targeted at an adult, included misgendering, sharing photos already publicly posted, and questioning the professional suitability of this public liaison officer. So the fines, civil proceedings against X has a maximum fine of 910,000 Australian dollars for non-compliance. So you can't view it on Substack. It says it's withheld for a legal requirement. And Johannes Leek has brought back his father's GIMP character, who's whipping is this man dressed up in I don't know if it's a wig or dyed pink purple hair. Office of the eSafety Commissioner. Good, yes, I'd like to make a complaint about an online post that's left me feeling violated, degraded, and humiliated. No, it's not the type that that turned the person in the cartoon on. Now, of course, this is the Streisand effect, because it was reported in The Australian by Rachel Baxendale, and of course the eSafety Commissioner. I'm surprised that they did this again, because losing previous cases trying to censor Billboard Chris and Celine against the Machine. Now, the eSafety Commissioner, she previously said that when she was taking civil proceedings against Telegram, that the ABC sketch about Gina Reinhardt on Race Around the World, that filmmaker Kate McGuinness, speaking about when the revolution's coming, put a stick up Gina Reinhardt's butthole. And now the ABC, well, they have now apologized since their Ombudsman investigation has concluded. So Hugh Marks, the managing director, used to be the managing director of Channel 9. So it reads, the ABC refers to the film in a recent episode of Race Around the World referencing Mrs. Gina Reinhardt AO, while the Ombudsman found that the film did not breach the ABC's editorial policies. The ABC acknowledges the episode has fallen short of community expectations. The ABC apologises to Mrs. Reinhardt and to anyone else affected or upset by the publication of the film. As part of our review of this matter, we have considered whether the guidance in the ABC editorial policies adequately reflects current community expectations. We also considered whether relevant guidance sufficiently distinguishes between news and non-news content. As a result, the ABC will amend its guidance as it applies to violence. The film has been edited on the ABC's platform to remove the relevant material. Now, would Hugh Marks, when he was running Channel 9, have been so slow to apologise, or would such a sketch even be put to air on Channel 9? Now, Hancock Prospecting has released a follow-up statement saying the content shown on the ABC normalised violent torture against a woman and dehumanised an Australian such that she was worthless and okay to be sexually tortured. The internal ABC Ombudsman decision that the ABC did not breach ABC editorial standards fails all Australians, women, and the millions of taxpayers who fund the ABC. The fact that ABC editorial policies are not the same standards as Australian community standards says a lot about the ABC. And Gina Reinhardt will not let this go. After all, she took legal action against Channel 9 over its 2015 miniseries, The House of Hancock, where Sam Neill played Lancock and Mandy McIlney played Gina Reinhardt. She sued Channel 9 and they agreed to withdraw the series from streaming and further distribution, agreeing that it contained inaccuracies, so it has now been memory hold. So Gina Reinhardt, I think she should continue to pressure the ABC through various mechanisms to amend its editorial policies and also make it so that heads will roll. And Johannes Leake in The Australian did another great cartoon where it has now this is what I call satire, a stick in Hugh Marks's butthole, where he says, okay, Mrs. Reinhardt, we're ready to adopt a conciliatory position. ABC concludes its internal probe. Of course, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Now, we don't know whether the East Safety Commissioner had anything to do with the suspension of the noticer from X, but the good news is that the abolition... So the good news is that the noticer is back on X and that the abolition of the office of the East Safety Commissioner is one of the demands of the March for Australia free speech rallies across all Australian capital cities on August 30. Its other demands are the repeal of laws respecting free speech and political communication and a referendum to enshrine free speech in the Australian Constitution. So they're being organised by nationalist activist Hugo Lennon, otherwise known as Ozpil. So this is the video that he posted to his and March for Australia socials. Let me know if you can hear this.
Free speech is under attack. Albanese and the Uni Party want to take away your right to disagree with them. And why wouldn't they? If you can't compete in the marketplace of ideas, just ban the marketplace, just rig it. On August 30th, nationwide, Australians will be standing up for this most ancient right, to express ourselves, to let individuals shape the future of our country, not to allow a few to decide it for us. August 30th, we march for Australia.
And they on the marchforaustralia.org website, there's the list of locations. So Flinders Street in Melbourne, Belmore Park in Sydney. And now Beck Freedom, who was planning for another anti-mass migration rally that day, has cancelled hers and made another subtle, not so subtle, dig at Ozpil, who she's previously accused of kicking her off the March for Australia accounts. So she started Fight for Australia. And now Ozpil, he hasn't dignified her videos about him with a response. I've always found Ozpil, when I've interacted with him, to be pleasant and polite, which is what a lobbyist should be. Beck has a history of publicly dumping on people she doesn't like and making passive aggressive posts. Ozpil has defended the pivot to free speech as necessary, because without free speech, how are we going to advocate for against mass migration and the multicultural agenda before we turn into the UK? And the rallies come ahead of the High Court hearing of the challenge to the prohibited hate group legislation passed by the Parliament in the aftermath of the Bondi terrorist massacre. So Tony Burke in May used those laws to ban the White Australia Party, the National Socialist Network. So they are arguing that the laws place an unconstitutional burden of the implied freedom of political communication. Now, I did notice Beck today shared a video somebody had clipped of my 2025 interview with now One Nation Victoria leader and alternate Premier Warren Pickering, where he talks about remigration not going to happen. Now, this was The Guardian, with this hit piece, they're not doing... if they want to get readmitted to One Nation press conferences, this is the way to go around it. So it's interesting here that... it says that, quotes Warren Pickering, "I've heard people talk about remigration and things like that." Pickering told the conservative podcast WilmsFront, connected to right-wing nationalist website, the Unshackled. Of course, WilmsFront is an Unshackled production. It's interesting they call my podcast conservative, yet they call the Unshackled a right-wing nationalist website. It's interesting they don't name me by name, but call me the host. Now, I did agree with what Warren said. It's not going. He says you're not going to see it happen in any Western country. You can advocate all you like, but it won't happen. The reality is we don't need to isolate those people. They're new Australians from our communities. If we want them to ultimately assimilate to the Australian culture and the Australian way of life, you can't isolate them, and said that One Nation will not discriminate against people that are already Australian citizens. Now, there is a difference between mass deportations and re-migration. So mass deportations, which One Nation supports, is deporting visa overstayers, who are 77,000. The coalition have already copied One Nation's homework in that regard, and anyone who's tried to claim asylum and it's proven not to be, manipulated the system, they should be deported immediately because they have proven that they're a dishonest person trying to manipulate our system. So mass deportations, that's certainly something that obviously in Britain with Rupert Lowe, it's they still have illegal boat people as was that 15,000 per year, and they can't even keep track of who's in the country. I mean, the ones who are overstayers here are those who came by visas on planes and then have decided to stay, and there's no enforcement to send them back home. I did see that Thomas Sewell say that assimilation is worse than multiculturalism because it makes it harder to argue that they should be deported, that Browns should be deported because they're waving Australian flags. So again, Thomas Sewell is confirming that race is everything to him. But if you I'm sure he knows the history of Australia, but assimilation has always been a policy up until it was abolished in favor of multiculturalism. The migrants from Mediterranean and Slavic European countries were also expected to assimilate. And obviously, to use an example of a assimilated non-white migrant, Pastor Danny Nalia of, it's now called Reformation Harvest Ministries, but it was originally Catch the Fire Ministries. And of course, he founded the Rise Up Australia movement, which was a political party whose slogan was, and I'll do it in Danny's Sri Lankan voice, "Keep Australia Australian." And they said that Australia was multi-ethnic, but it shouldn't be multicultural. Obviously, they believed that Australia was a Christian nation, and there's another group of Christian nationalists who believe that Christian migrants are the ones who will better assimilate. I certainly think that, well, it's what most other countries that don't believe in white guilt, who are non-white, that are multi-ethnic states. They have a policy of national assimilation using the country that, well, we're not directly at war at, but the United States and Israel are, Iran. They are obviously a Islamic republic. It's a theocracy governed by Sharia law, but they are a multi-ethnic state. But obviously they have citizens are forced to assimilate there. That is, of course, an extreme example, just like Xi Jinping putting the Uyghurs in concentration camps to assimilate. Nobody here is arguing that we should go as far as Iran and China, but using the country that I went to earlier this year, that I am going to visit again next year, Thailand. When they were Siam, they were a multicultural kingdom, but then Siam became Thailand. They had a process of Thaification, including where I spent a lot of time in Isan region, which had a lot of ethnic Laos. They were all, there was a policy of assimilation with schools and the community government institutions, and it worked. And they didn't need concentration camps and all that sort of thing. It wasn't bloodied at all. And all residents of Isan, which is near Laos, don't consider themselves ethnic Laotian. Only various anthropologists say that. They all consider themselves Thai. So assimilation works. We just need to, good start would be just to one flag that flies outside of Australian schools, local government councils, no welcome to countries. So it's just that we haven't had a government for over 50 years that has had a policy of assimilation and multiculturalism. As Pauline Hanson said in her maiden speech, has led to ghettos, and groups are just speaking their own languages, speaking very little English.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
Now over to two-tier Britain, and of course the Black Lives Matter riots in the United States obviously spilled over to protests and ridiculous DEI policies in other Western countries, Britain and Australia. We had to change coon cheese to cheer, and Choco's Black Allen's lollies to cheekies. But of course, it was much worse in the UK, where they cut down a statue and threw it in the river. But it also led to DEI policies, particularly at universities, and this allowed the latest con artist, Jason R. Day, to be able to be Cambridge University's youngest black professor, appointed in 2023 at age 37 in sociology of education. So he was celebrated as a DEI success story, but his lies have begun to unravel, beginning with the plagiarization of his PhD, which, so it has been discovered that so he got it from Liverpool John Moores University in 2015. An analysis found more than 100 passages, 188 sentences, identical or highly similar to Paula Zidoak-Meyer's 2009 Brunel University thesis, sometimes retaining original editing areas. Now, Liverpool John Moores investigated the complaints and did not uphold the plagiarism, attributing issues to honest and reasonable errors. So Arday did not fully dispute similarities, but blamed lack of support and for his disabilities, because he claims to have autism and was non-verbal from the age of 11 and did not learn to read and write until he was 18. So he has immigrant Ghanaian parents. Now, what has also been uncovered is that he is an incredible fantasist. He claimed superhuman abilities. So this included that he had run 30 marathons in 35 days, including with a fractured, broken leg, using painkillers and ice baths. He claims that he raised £5 million for 70 charities, often tied to his superhuman running feats. And he later admitted participation in a syndicate of less than 100 people. And so he was also had a book deal in the works with Simon and Schuster, which there have some of it has leaked, the book proposal online. He claims that he visited South America and West Africa to install water points with water aid, though the charity states does not send volunteers. The memoir referenced a well in Brazil that is not linked to the organisation. He claims that he appeared in the 7up documentary series Impossible, because the original cohort were born in 1957 and was first broadcast in 1964. Also in his book proposal was a brain tumour timing relative to his PhD defence with memory loss and limited sleep. So he claimed in the aftermath of when his PhD plagiarism and other lies began to be exposed, that a severed pig's head was delivered to his parents' home. So police investigated and said that no such records were found. Now, he weaponized two-tier policing. He reported a journalist from the Times education section to the police. So this was a Times higher education reporter, Jack Grove. He sent a 63-page report on apparent plagiarism to Our Day. So he called the police. Devon and Cornwell, it's them again every single time, who claimed that Anne Widdecombe's death initially was not being treated as politically motivated. So the police contacted Jack Grove to say that although they never threatened him with arrest or interviewed him, but police contacted him to say the questions that affected his mental health. Now, there was a previous allegation by academic David Harris, who contacted Our Day and institutions with his concerns about textual similarities. Our Day reported to him, to the police, and so he also contacted Our Day, the law firm Carter Rick, who said now to Jack Grove that they accuse Grove of inquiries amounting to a targeted campaign against Our Day that may be racially motivated. Now, Cambridge originally defended him. There was a letter of academics defending him, including Simon Baron Cohen, the brother of comedian Sacha Baron Cohen. It seems like to me that maybe that day was maybe this whole professorship was a Sacha Baron Cohen style character, like that his brother is famous for. So they've now withdrawn after the lie the lie dam wall has broken. Dawn says, can you blame him though? Not being capable must have been horrible for him. I blame Borat's brother. Well, he was just one of many academics who they wanted to believe this miraculous story of overcoming racial and disability adversary. And he was able to thrive our day because of Black Lives Matter. Con artists thrive because they have a narrative that a lot of people want to gobble up. So compare him to previous con artists such as Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos, who claimed that her Edison device could test for 200 conditions with a single drop of blood. Now, despite no proof that her device actually worked, was able to get billions in venture capital investment and got magazine covers. And of course, Jim Cramer called her the next Steve Jobs. Of course, it was all one big lie. They were faking the results for sales reps at Walgreens, who they got sucked into it for some reason. It was because she was young, pretty, and she sold herself in the Silicon Valley tech, even though it was healthcare, which is you're playing with people's diagnostic lives. So there was the feminist angle, even though she had her Indian boyfriend, Sonny, who ended up getting a greater jail sentence than her for defrauding investors. But they faked it using conventional diagnostic machines. So Jason Ardais has actually inspired me to watch the Hulu miniseries, the Dropout, which has the Mean Girls actor Amanda Seyfried play Elizabeth Holmes. Now, which technique had more science? Was it Karen from Mean Girls being able to predict when it was going to rain through her breasts, or Elizabeth Holmes's Edison device, which of course had the added effect of stigmatizing all scientific efforts to develop faster, more convenient blood testing, just like Jason Ardais' lies and fraud has made it harder for Black academics who actually are trying to achieve PhDs, research, and other achievements because of this fraud. And then, of course, we had in Australia Belle Gibson, who claimed that she cured her cancer through healthy eating. She got a book deal and was also going to get an app on the Apple Watch, was given an award by Lisa Wilkinson at Australian Women's Weekly, and her story was accepted without question by Australia's mainstream media. Again, she was young and pretty. Amazingly, she didn't go to jail. She was just forced to give over the money that she'd fraudulently fundraised, though she hasn't. And then, of course, there was George Santos, the Republican congressman, who told heaps of lies about his jobs and qualifications and was eventually expelled from Congress. So if any of these people put the amount of effort that they put in for lying, then they actually might achieve something of substance. But it's basically a personality disorder, this compulsive lying. Now, Jason Arday, the only real damage that he has done is, like, as I said, to aspiring black academics and to the students whose work he was supervising and marking, who are now taking action against Cambridge. Now, somebody who policing misconduct, there are no accusations of two-tier policing yet. Police misconduct actually led to the murder of two women. Was this convicted murderer and rapist, Simon Levy. So he has been convicted of the murder of Carmenza Valencia Trologo, 53, and Cheryl Wilkins, both in 2025, and a violent rape of a third woman. Now, what makes this so shocking is that he was already convicted and sentenced to just 3 years for sexual assaults in 2018. His venue of choice for sexual assaults were crowded public transport. A judge refused a sexual harm prevention order for him, which he would have had a greater level of monitoring. He initially, when he was released on license, which is their version of parole, in early 2023, while in prison, he sexually assaulted a female prison officer. The investigator charging him took roughly 3 years. While in the meantime, he was released, charged only in late 2025. In May 2024, he was recalled to prison over an alleged rape license breach, but not further charged, lost sight in one eye, reportedly an attack linked to the allegation. Upon his release in August 2024, the Met Police downgraded him from high to medium risk sex offender, citing his eye injury, making him less likely to offend, though he continued to offend, touching sexually assaulting women on public transport. He was able to access public transport with a stolen travel card. So there is a litany of police and judicial failures. He was granted bail on 2 occasions in 2025 when he was charged with with multiple sexual assaults on the transport networks, and while he was a suspect in the murder of Carmenza Valencia Trulizzi. So there are the 2 victims there. Now, this is just absolutely atrocious, and I can't believe that there's not more outrage about this. There would be in Australia, but again, you have the police in the UK. What's their latest one? They arrested a man after he bought a baseball bat from a Sports Direct and had a receipt and still had the tag on it. And then they've all these bootlickers in the comments saying, "Oh, it's still classified as a weapon. They better arrest all the cricket players coming back from practice with their cricket bats." I mean, it just gets more and more insane. And all the while, you have the new Prime Minister, Captain Casual, as Katie Hopkins calls him, is making ridiculous social media videos of him building a circuit school project, saying how he's going to recircuit Britain. That is going to get real old real fast, and he's going to be just as hated as Keir Starmer. It's even more cringe than Albanese's and the various government ministers' TikTok posts. I mean, he was sure, he's more charismatic than Keir Starmer, but it's getting cringe, and he's going to be hated very quickly. The Clacton by-election is this Thursday, so we'll finally get a result there, and Nigel Farage hopefully can get back to work in the House of Commons.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
And that's the show on this census night. Now later this week on Thursday, there's going to be the No to Hanson school walkout. So, of course, they always they've been programming and brainwashing the youth into multiculturalism and the progressivism, and so there's just like they had the students' climate strikes, they're now having the students walk out to say no to Hanson. I wonder if Pauline Hanson's young staffer will be able to infiltrate their rally this week. Now, of course, make sure you fill out your census or you'll get $364 fine a day. Of course, we love our fines here in Australia. The maximum fine that you can get is $3,640. So we will, it's still not as big as a COVID fine. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get to upload a report from Tiger Mountain with Richard Wollstonecroft this week. I hopefully intend to put one this week. He's holidaying at the moment, writing his new screenplay, so I'll record some fresh one with him because the ones I've got back in the locker are a bit dated now. And now, as you all know, I'm a contributor to Reality Check Radio. You can sign up to its Australian Bites newsletter at biteme.news. So you get that delivered to your inbox every weekday morning. Now, of course, if you want to support the work of the Unshackled, you can take out a premium membership over on the unshackled.net/membership, and also you can support us over on Substack at the unshackled.substack.com/subscribe. That is also where I send out email alerts of all Unshackled productions and the things published on the unshackled.net. And also you can catch up. I also alert about upcoming WilmsFront shows and also other Unshackled productions and Unshackled work on my Telegram X account and over on Gab. Dawn Browning says, I'm still waiting for our paper census to be delivered. I'm not sure if you caught my bit, Dawn, about your backyard chickens are safe now. They can still roam the yard and they won't be forced vaccinated, though we'll see if there's an escalation in the bird flu lockdown measures because the spread isn't going to be contained. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much for your company. I will see you all again next week, and hopefully you all survive this very cold winter. I just got my winter power bill and it was not $275 cheaper as Albanese had promised. But I'd rather turn my heater on than be absolutely frozen. But yes, I'll be looking forward early next year going back to Thailand to being in a much warmer climate. Good night, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to WilmsFront. Visit timwilms.com to view the archive of episodes. And keep visiting theunshackled.net to view all our shows. And to keep up with the latest real news and analysis.